All right, so thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. We're going to talk about how to best prepare for the virtual fair, which is coming up this week. If you do have any questions, please feel free to throw them in the chat as we go, keeping an eye on it. My name is Amy Drakesmith. I am Director of Employer Engagement for the St. Francis College Career Center. I'm also joined today in the chat by Gerald Tang, our wonderful Assistant Dean for Career Integration. So if you do have any questions, please feel free to throw them in the chat and we'll answer as we're able throughout the session. So before we get really into the preparation steps, the first off is to talk about the basics. So the details of the virtual fair are that it's coming up this Thursday, February 10th, from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. Eastern, and it will be held virtually via the Handshake platform. So just as you go into Handshake to look for available opportunities both on and off campus for jobs and internships, that is where you're going to sign up to meet with employers in either one-on-one or group sessions. The one-on-one sessions are about 10 minutes in duration, whereas the group sessions are going to be about 30 minutes and more like a traditional information session if you've attended any of those that we've put on virtually in the last couple of weeks with our employer partners. Be very similar to that. So you can sign up depending on the employer for a one-on-one session or a group session, depending on what you're looking for and what resonates with your schedule. Hi, everyone that's introducing yourselves in the chat. Great to have you joining us today. So the first step we're going to talk about is actually accessing Handshake. And I recognize some of the names on the participant list, so this may be old hat for some of you. But for those of you that have not accessed Handshake yet, there are two ways that you can normally access Handshake. Through your browser using sfc.joinhandshake.com and logging in using your My SFC credentials. Or you can use the Handshake mobile app, which is called Handshake Jobs and Careers and is available on the Apple App Store, Google Play, wherever you get your apps for your particular mobile device. When we're talking about the virtual fair, however, I do recommend using only the browser version of Handshake. You can still look at the employers that are attending the fair and some of the available opportunities at the virtual fair by using the Handshake app, but actually participating in the fair, the functionality is much easier when you are on a web browser. So if you're somebody who normally uses the Handshake mobile app, which I 100% recommend for applying to opportunities and searching available opportunities, for actually participating in the fair, you're going to want to make sure you have reliable access to a web browser to be able to access the fair through that web browser application. Prior to the fair, you want to make sure you update your profile in Handshake. The fields here that I've italicized, your school year, your major, your GPA, your graduation date, and your work authorization, those are going to be the most important things to update on your profile. These are the major fields that the employers that are attending the virtual fair have identified when they set their requirements for one-on-one sessions. So there may be an employer who's only looking to talk to juniors and seniors because of the requirements of their internship program. By making sure your school year is up to date on your profile, you'll make sure that if you fit those requirements that the employer has indicated, that you'll be able to go right through and make an appointment with them. So you definitely want to make sure that those italicized areas on your profile are up to date and correct. If any of these are incorrect or you have trouble editing any of these, reach out to us at careercenter@sfc.edu. Let us know what's incorrect and what needs to be changed, and we'll verify that information and see if we can make that change for you. The other fields like experience, courses, and skills, those are areas that are great to update on your Handshake profile. They're not required in order to participate in the fair like the other fields are, but you definitely want to make sure your profile is as filled out as possible on Handshake, because when the employer is preparing to have a conversation with you, that's what's going to pop up when they click on your name. So you want to make sure that all of that information is as accurate on your profile as it can be. And yes, you can use your resume to fill in that information. So if you're looking at it, you're like, I don't know what to put here, and you have your resume, just move that information over and it'll be really easy to do so right in the platform. You also want to make sure that the most up-to-date version of your resume is uploaded to your Handshake account, and you can do that under documents. We'll be test driving Handshake at the end of this presentation, so I'll show you where that goes. And if you're thinking about redoing your resume in advance of the fair, save the date for tomorrow night. There's going to be a resume writing 101 workshop at 5 p.m. Eastern on Zoom. The rest of the information for that is also available in Handshake, and I'll show you that as well at the end too. Under your settings, when you think about how you're going to share out your profile, we do recommend selecting the community setting for the purposes of the virtual fair. This allows your profile to be publicly searchable by employers so that it's easier for the employers that you're meeting with to be able to see that you're interested in their opportunities. So wherever your privacy settings are usually set on your Handshake profile, we recommend the community setting for your participation in the fair. You can always revert it back to the privacy settings you're most comfortable with after the event. And then yes, when you log into Handshake, in order to start seeing the information that the employers are offering, you'll want to first find the fair in Handshake. You can either do that immediately through your Handshake dashboard by looking under Get Virtual FaceTime, or you can click on Events, which is at the top of the page. And as I mentioned, I'll be screen sharing Handshake when I'm finished with this presentation, so I'll be able to show you what that looks like. Hello again to everybody else that is putting in the chat. It's great to see your names and your majors. So thank you so much for joining us today. The next step we're going to talk about are the employers and the time slots. So different employers have signed up to recruit for different types of roles at the virtual fair. And not every employer is recruiting for every type of role available. Some are only looking for interns, some are only looking for job postings, some are looking for a mix of everything. And by clicking on the employer, you'll be able to see exactly what they're looking for and also their available times for one-on-one and group sessions. So even though the fair runs from 11 to 2, you might find that a particular employer is only available between 11 and 1 for one-on-one appointments, and then the second hour is their group sessions. Each employer has their schedule set up in a little bit of a different way. So by pulling them up in Handshake and taking a look at what they're offering and what time slots are available, you'll be able to see what works with your schedule. If you are looking at an employer in Handshake and their schedule does not align with your schedule, I know there are a lot of things going on campus, especially on a Thursday. So if you find that you're not able to schedule a time slot for the fair with an employer you're interested in, again, let us know, careercenter@sfc.edu. Send us an email, and what we'll do is we'll reach out to the recruiter representing that company, let them know that there's a student that wants to meet with them that has a time conflict, and we'll let you know how that recruiter prefers to get in contact with you. So even if you pull up an employer and you don't see something that immediately fits your schedule, let us know. Same thing if you find an employer that you're really interested in working for, but you might not be eligible for the role that they're recruiting for right then and there at the fair. If you're really interested in working for that employer in some capacity, let us know that too. We'll reach out to the recruiter and see if there's any information on the type of area you are thinking about that will allow us to reach out to them and get that information for you. You can also use Handshake by clicking on the employer's name to view that particular employer's Handshake profile. And through that, you'll be able to see information about where they're located, some more information about the company, and you can see reviews from other students both at SFC and across the country that have reviewed their experiences working there. Very similar to Yelp or Google reviews or any of the spots that you might find reviews on restaurants and local businesses. Handshake has those reviews as well from any students who have felt like they want to leave a review about a company that they've worked for on the platform. So you can see that as well. And if you see a time that you're available that the employer is talking about an opportunity, just click on an available time and then click confirm. That reserves your session, and then you'll see that session appear in your specific list of sessions for the event. Sessions book on a first come, first served basis, and you can book sessions up until the time that they actually take place, but we do recommend booking your sessions as early as possible, just so that if you do end up having an employer that's super popular, you don't want them to book up before you have a chance to book a time slot. But again, like I said before, with any time conflicts, if you are interested in speaking with a particular employer and their time slots are all full, send us an email, careercenter@sfc.edu, and we will reach out to that recruiter, let them know, hey, great news, your time slot is full and there's more students that want to meet with you. How can we get them in touch with you? And then we'll share that information with you when we get it. So the next step is to really think about getting yourself ready for the virtual fair before it happens. And your first step is going to be to do some research on the company beyond what's just immediately available on Handshake. Look up their website, look at what they do. How do they give back to their community? What is it about a company that particularly resonates with you, or a job that particularly resonates with you, that really makes you want to work in that role, besides the salary, besides the obvious things that we think about when we think about pursuing a job? That will help you start preparing the questions that you will ask the employer during your session with them. So it's not just that the employer is going to be asking you questions about your experiences. You also have the opportunity to flip the script and ask the employer questions about their company and their roles and what it's like to work in their organization. So by doing this research, you not only understand a little bit more about what the role is actually about, but you also are learning a little bit more about where you might fit in with that particular company. So you definitely want to think about, what are some of these questions that you might be asking, and jot them down as you prepare for the event. And then, yes, next step will be to reflect on yourself, because you will be getting asked questions by the recruiters about how you feel yourself fitting in with the opportunity. And you want to think about how you will connect to the recruiter and how you'll connect your experiences to the job posting. So when we think about this, we think about that quintessential first question, tell me about yourself. And I would say that 9.99999 times out of 10, that question is asked normally as the first question that an employer asks someone in a conversation. So you definitely want to make sure that you have some sort of an answer. And that's where your elevator pitch comes in. An elevator pitch is named so because the idea is that you're talking about yourself in the amount of time it would take you to tell someone that was riding the elevator with you about yourself before you get to the floor that you're looking to go to in the elevator. So we're thinking about 30 seconds here. So when you think about your elevator pitch, you want to think about who you are, what you're studying, what you're interested in, and what you want that company to know about you right off the bat. So if I was interviewing with an organization at the virtual fair, I might say something like, hi, I'm Amy. I'm a senior studying psychology here at St. Francis College. I'm interested in your organization because I really want to work with kids and help students who particularly have intellectual disabilities. So in that moment, I have told you who I am, what I'm studying, what my class year is, what school I attend, and why I'm interested particularly in their company and the type of role that I'm looking for. So by thinking about yourself and what might fit in to those areas, I just picked a particular opportunity that is available with one of the employers that's hiring at the fair on Thursday. But when you look at the company that you want to speak with and the job that you're looking for, you want to think about what might fit for you into that template. And that's your elevator pitch. If you want more information about this particular aspect and the things that we're talking about, consider attending our workshop at 3 p.m. on Wednesday afternoon on Job Interviewing 101. And the information for that is going to be in Handshake as well. And I'll point that out when we go into Handshake at the end of the presentation. So definitely hold that in the back of your head. If this is something that you feel that you need to work on, definitely stay tuned for more information on the session that our team is holding this week on that very topic. Ultimately, when you're answering these questions with employers, you want to tell a story. So your experiences are a story. They're not just lines on your resume about, hey, I can do this thing. Whenever you've written something on your resume, something happened that gave you that skill that you're going to be talking about with this employer. So you want to make sure you are telling that narrative. So they might ask you, tell me about a time that you worked on a team. It's not just something like, oh, when I had a job as a barista at Starbucks, we had to work together to make sure everybody's order was correct. Yeah, that answered the question, but that didn't tell a story to give the recruiter a little bit more context as to what skills you can bring to the table. So you might want to think about telling a particular story about how there was a huge rush one morning and you were short staffed, people had called out, and you needed to figure out how you were going to get everything done. So everyone needed to band together, take different stations, and make it happen. That gives a little bit more context, more emotion into your story, and allows the recruiter to really visualize you using that skill. And it helps them think about how you would be able to transfer that skill into a role at their company or organization. So this is especially good for any student who is like me when I was an undergrad student and I worked in retail. And when I started looking for internships and jobs for after graduation, I hadn't worked yet in the field that I was interested in, but I was able to talk about how the skills that I gained in my retail experience could apply to the roles that I was looking for after graduation. So definitely think about checking out the workshop that we have going on in the middle of this week to get even more information on how to interview. And ultimately, practice makes perfect. So whether you're talking about this with a family member, with a friend, with a roommate, definitely start practicing these. If you're going to make any mistakes, you want to make them in front of someone who loves and cares about and supports you before you're talking about it, in front of an employer in the virtual fair when it's ready for you to talk about that opportunity. So definitely think about how you can practice this a little bit before the event actually happens. And if you do want to make an appointment to talk with a member of our team in like a mock interview setting, you can always go to Navigate and make an appointment with our team through that system. So then ultimately, it's the day of the fair. You want to get yourself ready so that you can do the best you possibly can in the event. And the first step is to select a professional outfit. So yes, even though this is a Zoom meeting, you definitely want to make sure you're dressing professionally. This has two benefits. One, you look super professional for the interview. So we're talking either a blouse and blazer, or a suit jacket, or a nice dress, whatever makes you feel confident and professionally you. The next thing that it does is it kind of helps you get in that mindset of being dressed up, being dressed professionally. You think about putting yourself out there in a really professional way. So I definitely recommend selecting a professional outfit. And I definitely recommend wearing real pants. You never know if something's going to happen, and you have to get up from the camera to maybe turn something off or close a window or get to something. So I definitely recommend head to toe professional dress, no pajama pants. You also want to pick out the space that you're going to be doing the virtual fair in. And you want to try to limit distractions as you are able. You want to be engaged in these conversations, especially the one-on-one conversations where you only have 10 minutes with the recruiter to make a good impression. Now, I say limit distractions as able because sometimes we're not able to do that. We have family members that might be working from the same space that we are, or we're on campus because we had a class that just let out. And recruiters know this. So if you are unable to limit the distractions, be honest about them and be clear and just name them. We're coming up on 2 years of everybody working virtually and remotely, and people understand. So if you have a scenario where you're on campus and people are walking by because you're in the cafe, just say that to the recruiter before you start talking. Say, look, before we get started, I want to be honest with you. I just had a class that let out. I didn't want to be late, so I set myself up here. There might be some background noise, but I am engaged in our conversation. So as long as you're open and honest with the recruiter, that is really going to go a long way in showing that you took every step that you could to limit whatever distractions you were able to. You definitely want to plan to access your sessions early. The morning of the fair, if you are registered for a session, you are going to receive an email from us with help articles and tips to test your video, test your audio, all of that information. So definitely make sure you do that. You will be able to join your sessions about 5 minutes in advance to test anything out. So I definitely recommend being ready to join your session by 10 minutes before the start time. So once that button goes blue and you see the join session button, you're able to click it, make sure everything is where it needs to be, and then you're already waiting in the room for the recruiter to join you. And the last piece of advice I always give when on the day of the fair is before you actually sign on, you strike a power pose. And by power pose, I mean standing up, putting your hands on your hips like you're Superman, and taking a few deep breaths. And it sounds crazy, and you'll look a little weird when you do it, but it gives you confidence when you're thinking about standing there in a powerful pose and thinking about how well you're going to do. It helps you manifest that. So that's the last piece of advice that I always give when we think about preparing for something like a virtual fair. So once the fair is over, you're going to want to keep the momentum going. And any action that you talked about taking with the recruiter during your conversation, you want to make sure that you do that. So if you told them you were going to apply to a certain role, make sure you apply to that right away. Of course, if you do have an appointment with another employer right after that, don't miss that appointment in order to send the application, but definitely make sure before you log off at the end of the fair, you've taken any action that you talked about doing with the recruiter. If they requested you to send them maybe an updated copy of your resume, or maybe they saw your resume and want you to submit a cover letter, you definitely want to make sure you follow up with them and you send anything before the day is out. You also want to send a thank you note to the folks that you met with. We recommend, around 24 to 48 hours, you send some sort of thank you to the people that you met with. And try, however possible, to grab the recruiter's email during your conversation with them. But if you find that you miss it and you are recapping and you go to send your thank yous and you're like, oh, I didn't get it, email us and let us know, and we'll take a look and we'll see if we can get it for you. And then think about what your next step is. If you immediately submitted an application, maybe you want to think about what your interview might actually look like for that role. Or maybe you were talking with them and your next step is to apply and you want to talk about your application documents. You've never written a cover letter before. You're wondering what that might go into. Or you're thinking even further and there are some other things that you want to talk about for your next step. Connect with us, make an appointment so that we can talk with you about what you might be interested in doing after that. So now I'm going to stop the share on this and I'm going to go over to Handshake to actually show you what the fair will look like in the platform. So we'll stop the share, we'll pop up Handshake. And again, if anybody has any specific questions in the chat, feel free to throw them in, but we'll keep going. I'll keep an eye on the chat as we keep going. Just make sure that this popped up properly. All righty. So when you first log into Handshake, this will be what you see. This will be your dashboard. And one thing that I want to point out immediately, because we are so close to the fair, sometimes the fair itself will show up under this Get Virtual FaceTime with Employers session. So what you can do here is under Get Virtual FaceTime, you can click View All Events, and it'll start to load the virtual events that we might have going on. So here you can see all of our events that are happening. And if we want to filter for career fairs, we can easily do that. And this exact spot that we got to by clicking on the dashboard, but you can also get there from anywhere within Handshake by clicking Events in the top left corner. So if you're anywhere else in the platform and you're like, how do I get back to the career fair? Click on Events in the top left corner and you can filter for career fair. Then you click St. Francis College Virtual Job and Internship Fair, and that pulls up all of the information about the fair that is specifically happening on Thursday. You'll also see in there that we do have another virtual fair that's coming up in April. So you'll be able to see that information there as well. We only have a few employers for that so far as we're building up more and more. So definitely take a look at Thursdays because that's what we're here to talk about today. So you'll be able to see immediately some details specifically about the career fair. My information is there. So if you have any questions and you don't want to email careercenter@sfc.edu, you can always connect with me as well, and we can have a conversation about it. You can see a list of some employers that are attending, and then you can click Show All Employers, and that will show you the list of all of the employers that are attending. So for some of these employers, if you want to filter for only the ones that have said they're looking for internships, you can click that. You can filter for a variety of different things. I know for some of our international students, you can do some filters for work authorization, and that will help you as well. If you do ever have a question about whether or not an employer would accept CPT or OPT or be open to international, let us know directly. We're always happy to reach out to employers to answer that question so that we don't guess and lead you down a road that they might not offer. So there are a variety of different filters that you can use to search the different employers that are attending the event. But let's say you wanted to meet with a company, you would be able to go in and select a session by scrolling back. We're going to go back to the main page and we're going to click over here to available sessions. So when you click on available sessions, that's going to bring up an employer list that gives a little bit more detail as to when the employers are actually available. So see here for FDNY, we'll see that this is an employer that is offering 2 group sessions rather than availability for one-on-one sessions. So let's say I'm interested in a group session with the FDNY and I'm available at 12 noon. So I will click on this link. It'll tell me a little bit more about what might be talked about in the group session. And then when I am ready to confirm, I will click confirm for that session and you'll get a confirmation email from Handshake that you registered for a session. So I'm not going to book a time slot for the FDNY because I don't want to take that away from any of you. So I'll keep scrolling. And so when you go through the available session list, you'll see here the NYPD Cadet Corps has some individual sessions available. So when I click on one-on-one with the Cadet Corps, that's when it shows me individual time slots that the employer is actually available. So if I'm available at 11:50 a.m., I will click that, and then I can click confirm, and it'll confirm me for that time slot. Once you've signed up for available time slots, you can always click on your schedule, and that's where all of your sessions will actually show up from that you've booked with different employers. If for some reason you are not able to make a session, you can always click cancel, which will appear here under your schedule with your sessions, and a message will get sent to the employer that you canceled your session. You can cancel and rebook a session up until that session was set to begin. If you end up missing a session, unfortunately, you will not be able to reschedule with that employer during the fair. So if you do end up getting stuck, maybe your train is late, you're trying to get somewhere. If you do end up missing your session, let us know as soon as possible so that we can reach out to the employer on your behalf, let them know that you couldn't make it, and we'll connect you with them as they prefer to be connected to have a further conversation. But if you need to cancel something in advance, something came up, you can always cancel in the system. So we'll click back to all events here, and this will bring up all of the events that we have going on here at St. Francis College. So if you're someone who has been in Handshake, this should look really familiar to you. And so some of the things that I do want to point out are the events that we have coming up this week. And you can always filter for that by clicking this week. So you'll see that we have our sessions coming up. Right here's the session you're in right now. But we do have a second offering of this session going on Wednesday. So if you do have any friends that didn't make it and they want to get this information, they can always join us at 5 o'clock on Wednesday. But here you'll also see the resume writing webinar that I mentioned on Tuesday. And if you scroll down further, you'll be able to see the job interviewing one-on-one workshop as well. So that will have the information that you can use to look at what we might be offering this week to help you prepare even more for the virtual fair. I mentioned before about adding documents and looking at your Handshake profile, making sure it's up to date. You can always get there by rolling over your initials in the top right corner and clicking on My Profile. And that will show you your particular profile in Handshake. So you'll see that mine is pretty empty because I am not a student at St. Francis College. So you will see that yours is populated in with your major, your class year. So again, you want to make sure that all of this information is up to date, and you want to start bringing in some of your experiences so that employers can clearly see them when you're applying to available roles. So again, that's the way to walk through Handshake and see all the things that you can do for the virtual career fair. Hopefully this helped you get a little bit more information on how to stand out and how to succeed at the virtual fair. I'll stop the screen share and I'll stop the recording, and then we'll turn over